Good morning, everybody. I'm Brett Pape. This is Coach Bruce, and this is week 5 of the Coach Approach, Sunday morning edition. Coach, how are you this morning, man? I don't know if you were on Twitter last night, but I don't think it was more than 6 hours ago, and I had a beer pong at a University of Arizona frat party, so it's been a little bit of a struggle to get going, but yet I made the 2-hour drive. We're at your house and we're ready to kick off week 5 with all our start sits against the spread picks. But it's great to see you this morning, Coach.
Good to see you too, man. Welcome to the Bruce household. Yeah, I didn't know if I should use a Van Wilder reference or if I should go back like an old school reference.
Either or.
You're going back and starting up your own fraternity at U of A, so you could do some beer bongs and have some fun with the student section over there.
Whatever you want to call it, we won't be calling it again. I don't think I can handle another one of those, but it was a lot of fun to hang out and see, that part of the world down there at University of Arizona, and kind of hang out with a bunch of kids who like to have fun until the football game kicked off and University of Oregon had their way with them. But let's get right into it. So we've already got a game going on today in London with the Green Bay Packers playing the New York Giants. Surprisingly, the game's real tight, 20-20 late in the game, so we'll try and keep you updated on that as well. But let's kick off with the Detroit Lions, 1-3 at the New England Patriots. Key injuries, you got DeAndre Swift out still, so Jamal Williams has been nothing but spectacular, both with playing with Swift and with Swift being out. So obviously he is a must start. But on the other side of the ball, you've got Mac Jones out once again, so we're going to get Bailey Zappi. Coach, what are your thoughts on this game?
It's an interesting game. You got Detroit, who is, in all aspects, number one in scoring in the NFL this year, but also, one of the worst defenses. So they have to score points to stay in the game. And so you're going to continue to see tempo. You continue to see them try to spread the ball out. Exciting for Amon St. Brown. Looks like he's going to be a go this week based on what we're seeing this morning. So I've got him as a start in this game. I think if you have Amon St. Brown in your roster, he's obviously a must start. That does bump TJ Hawkinson for me from a start to a kind of midline. If you need to play him, you certainly can. He is the tight end 3 so far this year, but they've shown when Amon St. Brown is healthy, that's typically who that offense is going to go through, and I think you're going to try to pound the rock with Williams this week as well.
One thing that when we talk about our picks against the spread, I think the spread in this game is like 3.54. Is it New England? Who's the
That's Patriots -3.
Patriots -3. But, I feel like everybody always talks about what Bill Belichick's defense is able to do against opposing offenses. And, yes, they're the number one scoring offense in the league this year, but I am concerned about what the Patriots are going to be able to do at home. So I'm going to go ahead and take against the spread and take New England in this one, Coach.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because you're right. I mean, he typically will take your best offensive weapon, typically, and try to take him out of your offense. I think this week with Detroit, is that Jamal Williams? Is that Amon St. Brown? Is that TJ Hawkinson? DJ Shark is out. Josh Reynolds gets another opportunity as a wide receiver too this week. I think it comes down to, for me, I just feel like this Patriots defense is not the Patriot defenses of old. Yes, they're only giving up 200 yards passing per game, but they're giving up 136 yards rushing and 24.5 points per game. I feel like the Lions have enough offense. And I think with Bailey Zappi playing, I think you're going to crowd the box. You're going to try to do everything you can to take that run game away, force him to beat you through the air. And I think that's where New England's going to struggle in this game. So as bad as Detroit's defense is, I still feel like Detroit, for me, I'll take the point.
Got it. All right, let's move on to the next game. Here we go. We've got Game 4, Los Angeles Chargers 2-2 at the Cleveland Browns. Once again, for the Chargers, you got Keenan Allen out. For the Browns, there's no injuries of significance. Traveling across country, the Chargers kind of beat up. It's not just Keenan Allen out because obviously you still have the big right tackle, Slater out. So this could be a tough matchup for the Chargers. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and get my pick now before you get into start sits. I got to feel like this AFC West, the way that teams like Kansas City are starting to play better, the Raiders are playing better. This feels like a must-win if the Chargers want to compete for the AFC West this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll take the Chargers at -2.5. I just think that Cleveland Browns defense, as great as they are on paper, they're 19th in scoring. They're giving up 212 yards passing per game, 113 yards rushing per game, kind of middle of the pack. I like what the Chargers are doing offensively. I think Justin Herbert has passed the issues he had with the ribs. Last week he goes for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Against the Browns last time they played last year, he went for 398 yards and 4 touchdowns. 27 of 39 for 340 and 2 tutties last week against the Texans. The ribs are obviously fine. He's having a great year this year. Austin Eckler, they're struggling to run the football. What's surprising about the Chargers is they are one of the worst teams in terms of rushing attack, but they're doing a great job of using Austin Eckler in the passing game. We saw that last week with the additional targets. He certainly struggled as a runner, but he got 29 targets and got 27 of those as a back, running 188 yards and a touchdown. You're going to continue to play Eckler every week. And then Mike Williams, of course, Gerald Everett. I think everybody really, from the Chargers' perspective on offense in the passing game. And then for the Browns, I think Nick Chubb, he's RB1 this year. He doesn't have to have the passing volume to do it. You saw that with JT last year in terms of what he did in terms of the RB1. So I like David Njoku coming off a couple strong performances with 17 targets over the last 2 games. And then I'm sitting Josh Palmer, I think, this week. I think you're still trying to figure out between him and DeAndre Carter, who is that guy, even with Keenan Allen out. We've seen them kind of use Gerald Everett more and use obviously Mike Williams more. So I think for me, it's Josh Palmer will sit this week.
How nice if you're a roster manager and you have Gerald Everett on your roster. He was a guy that I know we both were in 2 startup drafts this year. I believe I got him in the 20th round in one of them, and someone else took him in like the 17th round. And to get the production you're getting, they talk about league winners. When you can get guys in the 15 to 22 round range that can produce for you right away, that's a league winner for you. And Gerald Everett's been doing great all year long. All right, moving on to the next game. Houston Texans 0-3-1 at the upstart Jacksonville Jaguars at 2-2. Key injuries in this game. There was nothing really mentioned, nothing really to be concerned about. You really got to love how Jacksonville's kind of responded and has kind of taken on the identity of Doug Peterson, and it's something for the people of Southern Florida to be excited about when talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars.
No, Jacksonville's done a great job. They're protecting the football. They're averaging 26 points a game, which is 7th in the league. But if you look at their passing yards per game at 19 and rushing yards at 19, they're middle of the pack. They're even in the bottom half of the league, so to speak, in that mid-tier. But they're doing enough to take care of the football. When they get an opportunity to get in the red zone, they're punching it in. James Robinson's looked really explosive, looks really good. Looks like he's back to form. They'll figure out how they're going to get ETN, I think, more involved. But starting this week, I've got Christian Kirk. I think that's obvious. He's the clear wide receiver 1 there. Note last week, he got moved more to the outside last week due to some injuries they had there. Now he's going to get an opportunity, I think, to go back to the slot where he tends to dominate. So I like Christian Kirk this week. James Robinson, we talked about him, doesn't get a ton of work in the passing game with just 7 targets on the year. But as long as he's getting, he's got 60 carries for 260 yards. I'm going to round up there for 3 touchdowns, averaging 4.5 yards per carry. So I like him this week. And then sits, Davis Mills. I don't trust Davis Mills this week. He's not gotten off to start this year that he did in years past. He has not finished higher than QB 17 in any game this year. And then Evan Ingram, he was a guy, kind of a sleeper guy for me in the preseason. I felt like with what Doug Peterson likes to do and how he likes to incorporate tight ends, and with trying to get Trevor Lawrence some easy throws, I thought Ingram might be a sneaky play this year, but that has not proven to be true. So those are my sits for this game.
Spread, you got Jaguars at minus 8.5. I always tend to take the underdog when I see spread that big, but not this week, Coach. I got to go Jacksonville in this one.
Yeah, I got Jacksonville too. I just feel like it's that year. Doug Peterson's got them on a little bit.
Here we go. Moving on to the next game, NFC South tilt versus the Atlanta Falcons 2-2 at Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2-2. Winner of this game is first in the NFC South after this one, and it is crazy because Atlanta has not been something that you've been excited about to tune in and watch. A lot of people are upset at Arthur Smith and his usage of Pitts and Drake and so forth. But what we don't know is what they're doing to get the wins, and it's been exciting if you're Atlanta. But who do you like in this one, Coach? You got to think Tampa Bay is going to get.
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay is going to get it done. I think as much as we want to root for Atlanta, I think you lose Cordell Patterson, you've got Kyle Pitts out. You can make all the conversations you want about how they're utilizing Kyle Pitts, but that's still a weapon you're taking off the field, whether you're using him or not. So I just feel like Tampa Bay is the team, and Atlanta is a heavy zone defense. They like they're big on zone scheme. Brady is third in passing accuracy and fourth in completion rate against zone defenses. He gets Chris Godwin, I think, who's now fully healthy. You get Mike Evans back, who had a suspension a couple weeks ago. Leonard Fournette, we're starting to incorporate Rachaad White a little bit more. I think this is a game that, Tampa Bay certainly should win this game, and I think they win pretty easily. And I'm sitting Marcus Mariota. I mean, you can go to the numbers. He's regressed for 4 consecutive weeks. He's not running the football like he did week 1. Certainly struggling in the passing game. 7 of 19 last week for 130 yards. So I'm out on Marcus Mariota.
We talk about before we get into the spreads, and it is a big one, Buccaneers -10. You talk about Leonard Fournette wanting to get him going. Last week he had -3 yards against the Kansas City Chiefs. And you saw a lot of Rachaad White. And I know you were real big on Rachaad White, probably because he played in your backyard at Arizona State. But aside from that, he did get 5 receptions in last week's game against the Kansas City Chiefs. I wouldn't be surprised to see his usage ticking up more and more as we move on in the season. And you know, I wouldn't feel I'd have no issues putting him in a flex spot the further we go along in the season.
Yeah, I don't have Fournette as a most start this week. I'm seeing the same thing you are. I do believe in the skill set Rachaad White has. I think if you hadn't had COVID 2 years ago, Rachaad White was on pace. He had 40 carries for 400 yards. You can do the math. He was averaging 10 yards a carry in the few games he did get to play that season. But his breakout year actually would have been a year prior to what it really was, which of course forced him to come back and play another year at ASU. So I think sometimes there's context, really have to dive in deep into some players and realize kind of what you're looking at.
All right, next game, Pittsburgh Steelers 1-3 at the Buffalo Bills, 3-1. Key injuries, not necessarily an injury, but there is a big news, and that's coming in this week, and that's Pittsburgh handing over the offense to Kenny Pickett. What are your thoughts on him and having to start off a career against the Buffalo Bills on the road?
Brutal. And if you look at their schedule, the next 4 games, it's brutal. But the Pittsburgh offense is 18.5 points a game. They're 25th in scoring, they're 28th in passing, and they're 24th in running. They're not doing anything. They're averaging less than 100 yards rushing per game. Naji Harris is a guy that has to see a ton of volume. He's not very efficient with the touches he does get, so it's got to be a volume play, especially at cost and what you paid for him in drafts before the season and maybe prior to last year, coming into his rookie year. So I just think it's probably time. Unfortunately, they're forcing to put Kenny Pickett in because because of the way Mitchell Trubisky was playing. But I have real concerns, certainly as a guy that's been an offensive coordinator at the high school level, certainly not comparing that to the NFL, but I think this is a really difficult game to put a new starter in for your first start against Buffalo, whose defense is second in scoring, first against the pass, third against the run. They've got 7 interceptions forced this year, and you got Kenny Pickett, who threw 3 picks last week in limited amount of play. So it's just not a good matchup for Kenny Pickett this week. So I'm certainly out on anybody on the Steelers this week.
One guy that you might have been interested in playing in, that's Isaiah Mckenzie. Yeah. But in the inactives that were just listed a few minutes ago, he is out. So maybe all the guys all the fantasy players that are really high in Gabe Davis, maybe we get to see a little bit of Gabe Davis kind of break out a little bit, because it hasn't happened since his opening game where I think he had 89 yards receiving with a touchdown. But since then, he's been kind of quiet.
Yeah, I think obviously we know that this offensive run is tough on Dave. I think what's worth noting too is what Devin Singletary has done in really taking that RB1 position. He's heavily involved in the rushing game. He's heavily involved in the passing game. In terms of when they do target running backs, he's getting the lion's share of the targets there from the backfield. It's not James Cook, who we thought it would be, right, coming out of Georgia. We felt like that was the reason why you brought him in. So I know a lot of us were high on him, but Mckenzie being out is tough, but I still think you can start Stephon Diggs with complete confidence. Josh Allen, I do think this is a game that gets away from Pittsburgh, probably mid-third quarter. I think it's going to be a situation where you're going to start to see Buffalo run the ball and pound the rock and run some time off the clock. So I like the matchup for Buffalo for sure.
I'm not really a fan of either one of these two teams, but I would like to tune in, and I'd like to tune in and watch it mostly just to see what we're going to see from Pickett and how he's utilizing those receivers, because that's a receiving room where you've got 3 guys that are heavily rostered in, Deante Johnson, Chase Claypool, and then the kid George Pickens. I mean, this is this is going to be a fun day to just kind of see where that could go with Pickett at the quarterback. All right, Bills -14. I'm all over the Bills. I hate big spreads, big lines, but I love the Bills and I love what they're doing, and I love today's matchup. The Bills for me.
Yeah, I've got the Bills too, simply because you've got Kenny Pickett starting. Again, 3 pick last week. What Buffalo's defense is doing the secondary, what they can do up front. They can rush 4, drop 7. They can rush 3, drop 8. You're going to make Kenny Pickett have to make some decisions. So, the run game has been non-existent for Pittsburgh this year with that offensive line. So, Buffalo big for me.
What are we doing with Naji Harris? If you got him on your roster and seeing the way things have gone through 4 weeks, he's a end of the first round, early second round pick for a lot of people in startup drafts, or even just in redrafts this year. It's been kind of a tough go for you.
I've was not big on Naji Harris in this season. I mean, I know he had a huge year last year in terms of overall numbers, but again, it's production versus efficiency, or volume versus efficiency. And he's one of those running backs like Zeke Elliott in Dallas over the last couple of years. If he's not seeing the volume, he's not giving you the return, especially at cost and where you drafted him. And so you have to really look at matchups. And you have to look at this week. It's not a great matchup for Naji Harris. They're not utilizing him in the passing game like we thought that they have in the past. And part of that's because they do have three receivers that can catch the ball. Not to mention you've got Pat Freiermuth, who I consider to be a top 5 tight end in Dynasty. I'm really, really excited about his future. So, yeah, I'm out on Naji Harris. It's volume versus efficiency. And if he's not getting, 25, 30 touches a game, he's got to score a touchdown to be relevant for you.
All right, let's move on to the next game. We got Miami Dolphins 3-1 at the New York Jets 2-2. Key injuries: Tua is out, so bring in Teddy Bridgewater. And for the Jets, you got Zach Wilson coming back in to start after he kind of led them to a victory last week late in the game, drove them down for a game-winning field goal. And I'm excited about this game because as someone who drafted a lot of Breece Hall, it's been nice to see him slowly take over the running back room in for the Jets. Yeah, I think he had more touches than Michael Carter last week, and I kind of wanted to see where that development is. And I don't want to miss his coming out party, and I feel like it could happen today.
Yeah, I'm a big Breece Hall guy, and I felt like Breece Hall was a guy who was going to take over that backfield, early on in the season. It hasn't happened through the first 4 weeks, but again, you're seeing his usage, go up every single week. It's actually taking more of the target share, which a lot of people thought Michael Carter would maybe dip into some of that, but we're starting to see Breece Hall take over both in the run game and in the passing game. So I'm excited for him this week as well.
The addition or not addition, but the need to play Teddy, how does that affect who you're starting sitting as far as for a pretty good wide receiver group in Miami?
I'm not concerned at all. I mean, Tyreek Hill has proven he's quarterback proof. Of course, he had Patrick Mahomes, so I think that's an obvious answer there. But I think there were some concerns going on too that would take away from how he was utilized in Kansas City. But he's actually seeing more volume per game in terms of targets per game, and he's still going to give you those explosive plays. They're finding ways of getting him the ball. Not quite as big of an average depth of target as you have with Kansas City, but they're getting him the ball in space, getting him involved in the run game a little bit with fly sweeps. I love what they're doing. In the last 2 games, got 160, or 2 games this year, he's got more than 160 receiving yards. I don't think it matters who the quarterback is for Tyreek Hill. I think you can say the same thing about Jalen Waddle, who already had a game this year with 19 targets. If you remember that crazy game. So I'm not concerned about either one of those two. I think what you would do is look at it. You have going into the season was, hey, Mike Gesicki's not a great play. If your tight end is the third option in your offense, it's not a must start for me. So not a guy that I'm really excited about. So Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are must starts in this game. And as far as sits go, we touched on it. Michael Carter, who's getting less and less of that market share in the New York backfield. I am excited to see Zach Wilson this week. I think he could have a good week this week, and that's where Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore come into play, and of course what they're doing, Tyler Conklin. So I'm excited for Zach Wilson.
I'm excited. If you're a Jets fan, you got to be excited. Period.
Yeah.
Everyone talked about in the offseason how they probably had on paper the best draft. It's looking that way. Sauce Gardner is looking like
legit.
Yeah, he's looking like
a
quarterback that should be drafted in the top 10 picks. So spread Dolphins minus 3.5. Taking a backup quarterback on the road. I'm going with the Jets here, Coach.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I'm going Jets as well. I feel good about what Zach Wilson's doing. I think what they're going to try to do offensively and utilizing Breece Hall. And again, we already went through the receiving core, the tight end position. I just like the Jets have enough to do it. Teddy Bridgewater is just not a guy that, typically is going to get you 30, 35 a game. He's going to manage the game, try not to turn the ball over, and, just try to keep them alive. But I feel like the Jets have a little bit more firepower this week.
All right, moving on to another game. We've got the Chicago Bears 2-2 at the Minnesota Vikings 3-1. Key injuries. I think key is knowing that David Montgomery is going to be back in the backfield for the Chicago Bears. So if you started, I know I did in a couple leagues, started Herbert, hoping to have a big game out of him last week. You got a productive game out of him last week, but you didn't get the game that he had 2 weeks ago, where I think in most standard scoring leagues he scored over 18 points. But what does this mean for starts and sits in this one for you, Coach?
Yeah, so talking about David Montgomery, I got up this morning at 4:30 this morning and start making sure that I have my notes filed in and making sure before you got to the house that I was at least ready and prepared for the show. And I had Khalil Herbert, all fired up as a must start, and just based off the production he's had, not just a couple weeks ago, but overall in the season. even when he was spelling David Montgomery early on and what he did, a couple weeks ago. And I just felt like, hey, this is a great opportunity for Khalil Herbert to continue to go down that road. But now with David Montgomery back, I'm not comfortable starting either one of them because David Montgomery's coming off an injury. Is he going to get the full lion's share? I think you're going to see more of a 50-50 split. I think Khalil Herbert's earned that. I think they'll start with David Montgomery, but I think you'll see a little bounce there. So I don't have either one of those guys in my starting lineup. I do have Dalvin Cook, who faces the worst run defense in the NFL as the Bears give up 184 yards per game. I think Dalvin Cook is a must start. We haven't seen the touchdown production we're used to seeing from him, but I think he gets in the end zone this week. Justin Jefferson, 11 plus targets in 3 out of 4 games, 147 plus yards receiving in 2 out of 4 games.
Rushing touchdown last week.
Rushing touchdown last week.
Yeah, he gets 174 yards receiving last week. You're like, dang, he didn't get in the end zone.
Yeah.
And then late in the game, they give him a rushing touchdown. So that was kind of like a cherry on the top of a great game.
Oh, absolutely. I think you start Adam Thielen this week. I think he's come on at 17 targets, 14 grabs over the last 2 games. He needs touchdown upside. That's always been kind of Adam Thielen's thing. I think this is a game this week that he could find the end zone. Then, like I said, I had Khalil Herbert in. Now I don't really feel comfortable starting either of those running backs unless you don't have a better option. Obviously, you'd probably start David Montgomery or Khalil Herbert based on what your options are. And sit Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, anybody in the Bears offense I'm not starting. If I was, it would be David Montgomery or Khalil Herbert. In passing game, I'm completely out.
Minus 7.5 for Minnesota. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be able to pick the Chicago Bears against any spread until I see an offense that's better than the last freshman football team offense that I coached. We averaged 200 yards passing. I think they're averaging under 100 yards passing. So I'm going the Vikings on this one.
So I'm flipping the script. I think the easy choice and the obvious choice is certainly Minnesota. I'm behind by, I think, 3 games. I'm picking against the spread against you. I got to find some games so I can find some variables. It's an intra-division game here. And just when everything seems like it just makes sense, you just have those games where you're just like, hey, I think this might be one of those games where, something happens. Kirk Cousins has one of those games where he throws 3 picks and, Dalvin Cook fumbles or maybe goes out with shoulder injury, or let's hope not. Right. Certainly don't want to wish that on anybody, but it certainly has happened with his shoulder popping out consistently. So I took Chicago and taking the 7.5 points. Minnesota certainly could win this game, but hey, they win by 7, I win, right? There you go.
All right, here we go. Tennessee Titans at 2-2. And they face and are at the Washington Commanders at 1-3. Key injuries. I was surprised to see this name popped up, and that's Jahan Dotson. He is not playing today. If you don't know who he is, he's a young rookie receiver that came out, flashed for 2 touchdowns right off the bat, his opening game. So here we are. What are your thoughts on this game, Coach?
Well, neither one of those defenses are good against the pass. You've got Tennessee ranked 28th, giving up 474 yards passing per game. And you got the Washington defense is ranked 23rd, giving up 260 yards passing per game. But this is one of those games where quarterbacks have an opportunity to be relevant. Derrick Henry is a must start. Back-to-back, he's RB3 and RB7. And he's got 11 targets over the last 2 weeks. He's been involved a little bit more in the passing game. I think we all have wanted that for Derrick Henry, especially in PPR leagues. So that's certainly encouraging. So I like him. I like Carson Wentz. Wentz struggles against pressure. And so I think if you take the Eagles game, as good as they are defensively, what they do up front and against the Cowboys, are one of the best defenses in the NFL right now. They're playing at an elite level. You kind of take those 2 games and go, man, name any quarterback those 2 teams have played against and they've struggled, right? Even Tom Brady in week 1 against Dallas had some issues and was sacked a couple times by Parsons. So I do think Wentz has a bounce back week this week. I'm starting him in my lineups just based off what the opposition is against the passing game.
I think this is a team where, surprisingly, I think both teams can have success throwing the ball.
Yeah.
They both have struggled defensively against the pass. So Titans minus 2.5. I see that you picked the Commanders. I'll let you tell us why in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and go against it. And I'm going with Titans. I think they ride Derrick Henry to win.
Yeah, I think it was a tough one for me. This is when I went back and forth on. I mean, I'm sitting Antonio Gibson. Brian Robinson is back.
What a great story, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
shot twice in the leg, and here he is, week 5 playing.
Yeah, and I was big on Brian Robinson coming out. There was a lot of ages that, hey, he's 25 years old, coming in the league. He sat behind. If you look at who he sat behind in Alabama, especially in today's day and age where kids are transferring out, Brian Robinson could have transferred out of Alabama and gone to another SEC school and been the dude, probably a sophomore, junior year. But he chose to be loyal, stay in Alabama. Played against guys he played behind some really good NFL guys they're in the NFL now. So I like Brian Robinson. I think he's going to get some short runners and goal line work. I don't think he's used a ton this week. You got to get the conditioning up, but I do think there's some opportunities there for him to get some carries. So I'm out on Gibson. As far as the spread, I'm taking the Commanders simply because, again, I think this is one of those games going back to who Carson Wentz was in week 1 and week 2. I think he gets an opportunity. It does frustrating for me to see that Jahan Dotson is out, but I still like Terry McLaurin. I like Curtis Samuel. I like Logan Thomas. I still think
Logan Thomas is out too.
Oh, Logan Thomas is out too. Well, there you go. I'm
Yeah.
still taking the Commanders because we don't flip the script, right?
There you go. There we go. All right, moving on. Real quick before we get to our next game, Perry Williams has flex 2 CeeDee Lamb, which CeeDee Lamb over the last couple of weeks, he's looking like a wide receiver 1. So he's definitely in there for me. The next one, Deante Johnson, Devonte Smith, or Stevenson. I don't like Johnson's matchup against the Bills, especially with a rookie quarterback going in there. So now it's between Devonte Smith or Stevenson. I think I'm going to take Stevenson just because of the matchup with New England facing Detroit Lions. We've already talked about how Detroit may have the worst defense, and that could bode well for Stevenson.
Yeah, if I'm reading this correctly, you're flexing 2. So my choices there would be CeeDee Lamb, and of course he already went through why Deante Johnson does not have a great matchup this week. Not only that, he's not getting into the end zone. His average depth of target is not great. Devonte Smith has splashed in some moments. I think the Eagles' offense is certainly humming. I expect them to focus more on the run game this week and get out early. So they're going to be in a positive game script, I think, in the second half of that game. So I love Ramondre Stevenson. So I'm right there with you. I take CD and Ramondre Stevenson as well. Appreciate the question, Perry.
Yeah, bring him in every week. Here we go. Let's move on to the next one. Seattle Seahawks at 2-2 at the New Orleans Saints. 1-3 key injuries. Jameis Winston once again is out. And so now you've got the Red Rocket, or what was his name?
Red Rifle.
The Red Rifle. There we go. There we go.
Andy Dalton.
Little Andy Dalton's playing this week.
More of a pea shooter nowadays, but hey, whatever.
Here we go. Tell us the breakdowns on this and who you would start or sit in this game.
So the Seattle defense gives up 28.9 points a game. They're ranked 31st or 28th against the pass and 29th against the run. So the Seattle defense, as good as the offense has been, has struggled this year. So I like Chris Olave, even with Andy Dalton. I think even more so with Andy Dalton, just from the standpoint of veteran guy, understands what's going on. The Seattle defense has not looked great so far this year. So I like Chris Olave this week. He's got 33 targets over the last 3 games. He's number 1 in the NFL in air yards. He's 16th in receptions, and he's 9th in receiving yards as a rookie. Really coming on of late, 26% target share. So Olave, to me, is the only must start in this game, especially with Michael Thomas out. I really like what we're going to see there with Chris Olave and Andy Dalton. Alvin Kumar is back this week. I do want to see what that looks like. Obviously, if you have Alvin Kamara, you're probably playing him. I think that's kind of an obvious answer, unless you somehow are just absolutely loaded with robust running back, and somehow you've got top tier guys that you don't have to play him this week. But he's there, and there's not anybody I hate in this game. So there's not anybody that I'm really sitting. I think that DK Metcalf, is going to be relevant. I think Tyler Lockett, Will Dissly has come on. I know they run 3 tight ends out there, but Will Dissly seems to be the guy in important situations they kind of lean on. But they're just not guys that I think are must starts. As great as Geno Smith has been, that Saints defense is pretty good. They're not playing at the level I think everybody thought they would, but I still like what they're doing, and I don't think Geno's going to have one of those Geno type games this week.
Well, what is a Geno type game? Because are you talking this year Geno Smith type game, or are we talking about the Jets Geno Smith game? Because
we're talking this year.
Okay.
I tried to write to Geno, but he told me he wouldn't write me back, so I figured we'd just go over it on the show.
There you go. I will say this. I mean, how impressive you've been with that Seattle team. I know they're only 2-2, but they're competitive. And a lot of people thought, especially when they didn't attack the free agent mark or attack trying to trade for Jimmy G, that this was certainly looking like they wanted to just tank. And Geno Smith has gone in there and almost stabilized the locker room, and it's made it an environment where Pete Carroll, I mean, maybe he's not going to retire. Maybe they're trying to do something a little bit different, and things are looking pretty good out there. I'm definitely going with the Seahawks today over a beaten up Saints team.
Yeah, it kind of goes into the offseason. You kind of feel like, they weren't thinking, right? But if you look at Pete Carroll, I mean, I'm not sure how old he is, but he's 70 something.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have the patience, right, for a rebuild in Seattle. So you can tell he's not about that. They went out and got Kenneth Walker. We haven't seen him do what we thought he would do yet because Rashad Penny's gotten off to a good start, but I think they've got a really good running back of the future there. I think they've obviously DK Metcalf, is obviously a rising star, and what they're doing with Tyler Lockett. still being that vertical guy, intermediate to deep parts of the field. Geno Smith is balling right now. The confidence he's playing with is there. But so I'm like you. I'm taking the Seahawks. I'll take the 5.5 points.
All right, let's move on to the next game. Another NFC West team, the San Francisco 49ers, 2-2 at the Carolina Panthers, 1-3. Any key injuries other than, Elijah Mitchell still being out? There really aren't many this week. I'll tell you, just watching what San Francisco did Monday night against the Los Angeles Rams, that defense is Fred Warner. And I mean, I'm terrible with his name. I won't even attempt it. But that safety, number 29 for San Francisco out of USC, what another playmaker that they find every year on the defense side of the ball.
Yeah, they look really, really good. That front seven and now what they're doing on the back end of that defense has been absolutely light out. And San Francisco's going up 11.5 points a game, number 1 in the NFL. They're only giving up 161 yards passing, which is number 2 in the NFL, and only 73 rushing yards per game, which is also second in the NFL. So San Francisco's clicking on all 3 levels. Fred Warner right now may not have all of the stats, some of the things that don't show up. But if you watch their games, he's so good at recognizing schematically what teams are trying to do. He's so good at dropping in coverage, and he's coming downhill. He's laying the hammer. So he's in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, right up there with Micah Parsons and Bosa and some other people that have played well. But yeah, I just think San Francisco right now is rolling. Jeff Wilson is a start for me this week. 57 carries, 255 yards. He's averaged just shy of 18 touches and 95 yards with a 63% snap share over the last since he's taken over this backfield. And Carolina's defense is susceptible against the run, so I like him this week. I like Deebo Samuel. I don't think I'm going to have to go a lot and elaborate on that one. And I'm sitting Jimmy G and Baker Mayfield. I'm sitting both quarterbacks simply because I think this is a game that San Francisco dominates. I think it's a game where they can run the football late in the game. I don't think there's going to be where Jimmy G really – I don't know that you ever want Jimmy G to have to be anybody, right? He's that game manager. He's at his best when he can just manage the game. So I'm sitting both quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield. We don't have to go through Carolina's offense in the passing game. They're absolutely brutal.
It's sad to see because you kind of hoped that he was going to kind of be what we expected him to be when he had the trade to Carolina after the rough off season of having to hear all the stuff about bringing in a new quarterback, Deshaun Watson, and all this and that. So you kind of we're pulling for him, but it's not looking good. Spread is minus 3.5 San Francisco. It's San Francisco easy pick for me, and I'm sure it is for you.
It's easy for me as well. Yeah.
All right, here we go. Game is Philadelphia Eagles 4-0 at the Arizona Cardinals 2-2. I feel a little weird wearing a Arizona hoodie and being in an Arizona home, but I'll tell you, Arizona Cardinals, I just haven't seen enough to know why they're sticking with Cliff Kingsbury. I know that they have injuries with guys like J.J. Watt, the suspension to Hopkins, but this is a team that isn't able to – it doesn't look like they're able to put a 60-minute football game together, whether it be they go out to a quick start and then kind of fade or vice versa, like they did against the Raiders, don't do anything for 3 quarters and then come back. What are your thoughts on this game? And they kind of got to lose that bipolarness that they've got going on, especially when they play a team like the Eagles.
It's the cardiac cards, we like to call them out here in Arizona. It just seems like they struggle now. The last few years, Cliff Kingsbury, they've usually gotten off to a hot start and then really fizzled at the end and then in the playoffs. Whereas this year, hey, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's struggle early and they're going to get it together late in the season. I don't see anything that suggests they're going to figure it out. I'm starting pretty much everybody on Philadelphia. I love Jalen Hurts this week. A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, I think has looked great. Increased volume. He's now getting real true RB1 volume. The only guy on the Cardinals I'm starting with confidence is going to be Marquis Brown. I think he's an absolute alpha in that offense. And I'm sitting, as far as sitting goes, I'm not confident James Conner, but if you got him, I mean, what are you doing? But there's just not anybody that I look at and say, hey, this guy's an absolute sit in this game. So, I mean, Zach Ertz is a guy, if you have him, you're playing him. He's a top 10 tight end so far this year. So I'm not really sitting anybody, but I will say I'm not excited about the matchup for Kyler Murray.
No, I mean, I don't know if he's watching film or not, but whatever isn't working, it's not working. And you'd like to see him kind of start earning some of the money that he got in the offseason. The pick, I don't know. We don't have the spread down because it wasn't up when we looked earlier, but I can tell you this. I don't care what the spread is. I'm Eagles all over this one.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer for me, which is up. I think the spread was probably up, and I think I had it. I just didn't put it down because I think this was an obvious pick. It doesn't matter what the spread is. We're going with the Eagles.
Right, moving on. Dallas Cowboys 3-1 at Los Angeles Rams 2-2. Cowboys are playing really well with Cooper Rush. The Rams aren't playing very good with Matt Stafford right now. So whether it be the lack of a running attack the Rams are kind of seeing, or the lack of a second receiver, whoever that may be, because it certainly hasn't been Allen Robinson as of yet. What are your thoughts going into this game?
Hands up front just do not look good. I mean, that offensive line has been absolutely just mauled. It seems like every single week, Stafford's having to play off platform. It's not something he does extremely well. So if you can get pressure on him, this is the worst matchup for Matthew Stafford I think he's had all season. And he's had some moments where he hasn't looked really good. Dallas being number one in the NFL in sacks and second in pressures, and you're facing a defense that is absolutely just balling at all levels. Donovan Wilson's playing phenomenal at the safety position, coming up against the run and playing well in coverage. You've got Trayvon Diggs, who's given up nothing this year when you look at his coverage numbers. So he's one of the highest graded corners in the league this year. It's just not a good matchup for Matthew Stafford, but obviously you're starting Cooper Kupp. Don't need to go a whole lot into his numbers. He's targeted 19 times last week, 14 targets in 3 out of 4 games. He is who he is, right? You just hope you can contain him, try to get most of his receptions underneath, and then just come up and rally and make a tackle. Tyler Higby has seen a lot of targets over the last couple of weeks. He doesn't do a lot with them in terms of yards after catch or getting in the end zone, but he's relevant because he's getting he seems to be getting close to 10 targets a game. So I think you're playing Higby. CeeDee Lamb has come on the last couple of games. He doesn't have the catch rate that I would like. Only 23 receptions on 42 targets. But if you watch the game, some of those throws have not been great throws. But he has gotten in the end zone a couple times this year, and he's seen 11 or more targets in 3 out of 4 games. When you're seeing that type of target production, typically that means those numbers are going to follow. So I like CeeDee Lamb this week.
Yeah, I'll say it's nice to see as a CeeDee Lamb. I have lots of shares of CD, and he's always been and a lot of people's dynasty wide receivers top 5. And just seeing him, he looks more and more like an alpha over the last couple of weeks. He looks like a guy that's ready to not only be physically able to handle the role, but mentally able to handle it as well. So I've been really happy to see what he's been doing lately. What I haven't been happy with, and I know you're going to talk about him in your sits, is the performance of Cam Akers. There's this whole new guy on Twitter, or I don't know who it is, but the fantasy receipt guy on Twitter right now, and how they're bringing up everybody's old takes. I'll tell you what, if you were to go back to my takes a couple years ago and what I thought Cam Akers was going to be, you would see that my take should probably be up there right now as well. But I only say that because it's been very disheartening to see that he doesn't seem to have the same juice that he had prior to the injury. And again, that could be because of the offensive line, the guys up front not being the same as they were last year or the year before. But it's been a struggle for them offensively, especially running the ball.
Yeah, we talked about Stafford and the offensive line and kind of what's going on there. So obviously Stafford for me is a sit this week. Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. It looks like they were trying to go towards Cam Akers. I think he started last game, got the first, winning the first series, the first team offense, but he has not looked great. And again, I think offensive line. Henderson led the backfield in snaps again last week, even though Cam Akers got the first team reps of the first series. But just don't trust the backfield. You're going up against a defense that's third in points against this week. So not a good matchup for those guys. Elliott and Pollard, I don't love the matchup for them either. Rams have allowed the fewest points to running backs this season. They seem to be splitting work. Now you can make the argument if you have Zeke. He does seem like he has situations. He caught the pass and went for 30 yards. He's had some runs of 10-plus yards. We are seeing a little bit more burst, but he's not getting that 25 to 30 touches a game that you would see back in 2019, 2018. So I'm out on Zeke. He's got to score a touchdown to really be relevant. I'm out on Pollard because he's not getting the explosive plays we saw him get last year on a consistent basis.
When you look at this line kind of surprises me. And now, wouldn't it surprised us 3 weeks ago if we were to say, okay, when the Rams face the Cowboys do not have Dak Prescott, Rams are a minus 5.5 favorite. You say, okay, I mean, heck, I'm all over the Rams. But here we are now, and we've got a team that's 3-1, and the Cowboys playing really good defensively, and the Rams struggled last week. And I'm taking 5.5 points all day long, and I'm all over the Cowboys on this one.
Yeah, I'm over the Cowboys too. I think this game really comes down to, can the Rams create pressure against Cooper Rush? The Cowboys are running the ball just enough to be dangerous, to set up play action, create. I love when they go outside zone, naked bootleg, and they have a tight end that comes across and they get him open. They're using a little bit of the tight end screen game a little bit. So I like what they're doing schematically. If they can keep the Rams from creating pressure and Cooper Rush can continue to throw from a clean pocket, or get the ball out of hands quickly. I think the Cowboys are right at this game can come down to a field goal at the end. So with the points being where they're at, I'll take the Cowboys as well.
All right, let's move on to the Sunday night football game, AFC North battle between probably the two best teams in the AFC North. Cincinnati Bengals at 2-2 at the Baltimore Ravens 2-2. Key injuries, there's not anyone of significance that we got to worry about. This should be a fun game, and I'll tell you, another team who started out slow, but after week 5, if they get a win tonight, Cincinnati Bengals are going to be right where many people thought they should be.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their schedule this year, they didn't play in the first 4 games, and now you got the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Bengals, if they can figure out a way to pull this game out, they're right there. And look, whoever ends up 2-3 after this game, is still very much in it. So I think both these teams are playoff teams. But as far as starts go, I mean, there's not anybody I'm not starting this week. I will say you could look at the backfield in Baltimore. You know, where's J.K. Dobbins at? But he did get in the end zone. So I think you're still, if you've got him, you're starting him. So Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, you're starting all those guys. Joe Mixon hasn't been crazy efficient. The run game has struggled in Cincinnati. Look at their average yards per carry, but Joe Mixon gets enough volume to be dangerous. So I would still play him if I have him, just based off pure volume alone. So I'm pretty much, there's not anybody that I'm not playing in this game.
Who are you picking in this game? You've got the Ravens at minus 2.5 favorite. Minus 2.5. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Well, it's a home game for the Ravens, right?
Yep.
I think it comes down to, can Joe Burrow attack this team vertically? Because the Baltimore Ravens have been really, really struggled against the pass. I think everybody's thrown against the Ravens this year. So the Ravens have got to do enough to keep that passing game from exploding. If they can do that, being at home and control the clock like they want to do in the run game, I like the Ravens. I'll take the Ravens simply because they're at home, and I think this game could come down to the end, but I think the Ravens end up winning out. Wouldn't be surprised if Justin Tucker gets a last second field goal, would it?
It wouldn't surprise me at all, but it will surprise me because I'm going to go the other way. And that's because, when I used to be into betting, had an old friend of mine who kind of did it every day and get up every morning, Coach Bledsoe, God rest your soul, love you, brother. But he always talked about just going on the road, you're automatically minus 3 points behind. And with the spread being minus 2.5, I'm going with the Bengals. I think the Bengals have kind of figured some things out. I think the Ravens, as well as they could easily be 4-0, they could also be 0-4 at this point. They got some things they still need to figure out, and one of them is that rushing attack, and more importantly, what they're doing on the defense side of the ball. So I'm going to go with the Bengals, and then we're going to go on to the Monday. Did you make your pick yet? Yeah, you went Ravens. Okay. Monday Night Football. Here we go. Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. It seems like every week we're watching the AFC West team play Monday or Thursday night. Hopefully this is much better performance than we saw last Thursday's game with the Buccaneers, or not Buccaneers, I'm sorry, the Broncos, that game that we had to go through.
Yeah, 12-9.
Yeah. All right, here we go. So Las Vegas Raiders 1-3 at Kansas City Chiefs 3-1. Key injuries, nothing of significance. What are your thoughts? Who you like? What are we doing here?
Yes. The first couple of weeks and what this offense is going to be. I think the offense is exactly what we thought it would be in the offseason, right? Not as much of that vertical passing game, work a lot of stuff underneath, mix in the run game. You're seeing what they're doing. They're still using the crossing routes. They're still finding ways to get Travis Kelce in space against zone coverage. They're just a more efficient offense, but never bet against Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Eric Bieniemy, right? So It seems like it's working out just fine. So I like Mahomes. I like Kelce in this matchup. I still stay away from the receivers because every given week we don't know
who's going to be the guy, right?
So I'm not confident starting any of the receivers there. I still like Darren Waller. I know he's had a tough start to the season in terms of where he was last year and the year before the injuries came into play. Josh Jacobs was outstanding last week. Hopefully they've untapped that and understand if we want to win football games, we've got to get the ball into Josh Jacobs' hands. If they continue to do that, I think the Raiders can certainly be in this game. But and of course, Devonte Adams. I mean, you're starting him every single week. As far as sits go, I don't love Kansas City backfield. I think at some point you got to look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire and say, hey, can he continue to be as efficient as he's been based on the number of touches he's getting? He's not seeing true RB1 volume, but he's finding ways to get into the end zone. And he's relevant in the passing game as well as in the run game. So he's doing just enough to stay relevant. But I think this may be that game where the running backs in Kansas City don't pay off for you.
I hear you, but I mean, I think he's RB4 on the season.
You have to start him.
Right? Yeah. And I just feel like, I don't know if he's necessarily figured it out, the NFL game, but I kind of think the Kansas City Chiefs have done a better job of figuring out how he's best suited for it. So, but I also like, you look at what Isaiah, I keep bringing him up, but Isaiah Pacheco, week in and week out, is getting you
Love it.
10 carries, 57 yards. I'm not saying plan, but I just like the talent, and I think down the road, if there is a hiccup like Clyde Hilaire, you could see more and more from Isaiah Pacheco. Coach, I'll tell you what, this morning about 4 o'clock in the morning when I rolled into my daughter's apartment, I didn't think this was going to happen. I didn't know if I wanted it to happen, but we made a commitment, and I appreciate you hosting me today, sir.
Yeah, you bet, man. It's great to have you at the Bruce house, man.
All right. You guys have a great day. I hope all your teams do well, and we'll see you Wednesday night.
Stop it.
We're trying to get out of here.